Some might say I'm obsessed with death, but I think the way people die tells us a whole lot about how they lived. I'm going to explore some of history's most famous lives by looking at them through their extremely curious deaths.
Oh, Dr. Lindsay Fitzharris, you have me hooked. I've been saying it all morning.
Right.
I love crime docu-series stories, and I don't know what it is because I'm not one. I don't know. I'm not as obsessed with death as you kind of just put it there, but I am intrigued with real life and kind of how things happen. And I will say this is a series, again, coming to the Smithsonian Network, that I have not really seen this perspective being taken before. Tell us more.
That's so wonderful. I'm so glad to hear that, because this is really a hybrid. So it's got true crime, it's got a bit of forensics, it's got history. I'm a medical historian, so I love to throw in weird facts. And in the first episode, I'm going to be reopening the case against Lizzie Borden, who you might remember allegedly took an axe and killed her mother, her stepmother, and her father with it. But she was actually acquitted in 1893 because an all-male Victorian jury couldn't conceive of a woman being able to commit such a heinous crime.
Okay, so I'm seeing what you're doing here. You are literally very hands-on. What is it that you're looking for? What is it that, again, because these crimes have been looked at quite a bit, they're fairly popular. I hate to say the word popular when you're talking about a crime, but they're very well-known stories. Tell me about the hands-on that you're hoping to discover.
So one of the things that we look at is, you can see next to me that I have this ballistic gel body. These were created by a man named Chris Mills out in Los Angeles, and they react just like human bodies. So I can put them through ballistic tests. I can autopsy them. I can take a hatchet to them to see just how much, force was needed by Lizzie Borden if she did commit the crime to crack through the skull. So these bodies are a great scientific tool into those stories. But I think the thing that makes this different is that we have a host of different experts in this. We have an ex-Scotland Yard detective who steps me through some of the crime bits. We have an analytic forensic chemist, Dr. Rachel Burke. She's wonderful. Dr. Judy Melanik, who worked on the 9/11 site. She's a forensic pathologist. So we're able to look at a lot of different angles. One of the episodes, for instance, is on Pablo Escobar, the cocaine king of the 1980s, who was killed in Colombia. And we interview his son, and his son claims that his father would never have allowed himself to be taken by the police, and that he thinks his father took the kill shot right to the temple. So we do a lot of ballistic tests on these gel bodies, and we come up with a verdict of our own.
Well, and looking kind of at the lineup, these are crimes that were committed a number of years ago. So I'd imagine the technology and the science that you now have behind you to kind of look at these things is extremely different and available that it wasn't, decades ago.
Yeah, obviously, when you're looking at Lizzie Borden, one of the interesting things is I wrote a piece for the Wall Street Journal about how the crime scene photos are some of the first ever used in a trial to undermine the testimony of the accused. So we have a lot more technology, but we do have some more recent case. We look at, for instance, the death of Brittany Murphy, who died in 2009 under very strange circumstances. And her husband died I believe it was 2 months later under almost identical circumstances. It's a very strange story. And we interview his mother about what happened on those days. So we have new testimony. We have new people coming in, getting involved. We have Pablo Escobar's son. We have just a wealth of people who are involved in this show. And I hope that it will add a new perspective to stories that people think they know.
Yeah. In this world, I'm always kind of curious when we talk to, different elements of different TV series coming out. When were you guys able to shoot all of this? Because I'd imagine, everything was put on hold this year.
That was a nightmare. We filmed the bulk of it really at the end of last year, but then we had to, these things are cut together and then you have to get back into the studio. Now I'm in England, so I'm, coming from afar. We had the pandemic somewhat under control in my area, so we decided to get back in the studio and finish it. But it was an interesting experience filming in the midst of a pandemic. I always say, I have, I'm a medical historian, so I have my plague doctor mug. This is the original pandemic mask. If people don't know, it was invented in the 17th century. It's not medieval. But the doctor, and I have a bigger version here, the doctor would wear this in the 17th century, and he would stuff sweet-smelling herbs into the bottom of the beak. He thought that would protect him from the odors of the bubonic plague. So I think if we're going to wear masks,
that would keep people 6 feet away from you too, I think.
Right. Hashtag bring the plague doctor back, So that's my weird contribution. People probably are familiar with that now that we're in the pandemic, but most people think it's medieval. It's actually invented in the 17th century. It's a little bit later, but certainly a fun little fact for you. So that's what I do. I have no practical skills. I'm a medical historian. I just try to delight people about stories from the past. And
so what are you? Real quick before we end here. So when you're not working on this TV show, which we're going to hope there's going to be another season of this as well. So what are you doing?
I know. I mean, I can barely, I have no practical skills, as I said. Well, I'm a writer. I wrote a book in 2017 called The Butchering Art, which is all about the horrors of pre-anesthetic surgery in the Victorian period. So when people would go into these operating theaters, they were filled to the rafters with ticketed spectators. People actually bought tickets to see the operation. And it's about one man named Joseph Lister, who of Listerine fame, that's where we get Listerine from. And he applied germ theory to medical practice, and he saved a lot of lives. So that was my first book. My second book is about a guy named Harold Gillies, who was rebuilding soldiers' faces during the First World War. And he's largely recognized as the father of plastic surgery. So I do have other projects in the wings, but that's what I do when I'm not filming The Curious Life and Death of.
All right, girl, I'd love to have coffee with you sometimes. I know you have stories.
I would love that too.
Stories. Well, thank you so much for your time.
Happy back for Halloween. I'll tell you all kinds of creepy stories, but thanks so much for the opportunity to come on.
All right. Well, again, the series starts on Sunday. I'm going to be tuning in. We really appreciate your time this morning.
Thank you so much.